welcome me in joining David Lujan.
Thank you. I want to thank JFCS for inviting me to be your speaker today. It's really an honor. And I really want to thank JFCS for just all they do for Arizona children and families. And really, they are such a special partner for the Department of Child Safety. For many years now, they have been one of our greatest partners, particularly in developing new practices and programs that today serve children throughout the state. We truly could not do what we do without JFCS, so we want to thank them for that partnership and look for an even stronger partnership going forward. You know, one of the things I've learned in my first 9 months as the director of DCS is if we're going to really build a strong child welfare system, it's not DCS doing it alone. It is all of us working together. It is organizations like JFCS, it's community, it's nonprofits, it's faith community, it is all of us. And so JFCS is certainly reflective of that, and we are so grateful to have that partnership. As I mentioned, I've been in this role as the CEO or director of DCS for 9 months now. You know, I can honestly, confidently say that being the director of DCS was not something I ever aspired to or ever thought I would be. I'm not sure if anyone truly ever thinks, oh, I want to be the director of the Child Welfare Agency someday. But, you know, it has been a really rewarding experience in these first 9 months. So many people have asked, you know, why would you want to take that job? It seems like a very difficult job, and it is. It is, I would say, challenging, it's hard, it's scary, it's frustrating. It is, you know, all of the adjectives you can describe. It's also been, though, very rewarding and enjoyable, particularly in the people I've gotten to meet, both the people that work at DCS who are so dedicated and passionate to the work we do, and the organizations that we partner with, like JFCS. And, you know, Governor Hobbs appointed me to this role in around March of last year. And it was actually the second time I was considered, because when she was first elected last year, I interviewed with the transition committee, and they were considering me for the position, but they ultimately ended up going with somebody else. And you know, I was at that time, I was CEO of Children's Action Alliance, and I was very happy in that role. It's a great organization, and I figured, you know, I'm going to probably stay in this role until I retire. I never thought I would even consider leaving, because it's 18 people on the staff. It's, you know, really healthy organization doing good work. And so when I didn't get it the first time, I was kind of disappointed, but I was actually kind of relieved that I was going to get to stay at Children's Action Alliance. And getting feedback from the governor's team, they said, well, we actually didn't think you really wanted to be the DCS director, because when we interviewed, you didn't seem like you were that enthusiastic. And it wasn't that I wasn't enthusiastic and I didn't want the role. It was just that I think I tried to express to them my honest opinion of how challenging this role would be, and that, you know, it was a scary role. And I was willing to take it on because I think we can make some good positive changes, but I wanted to be honest with them that, you know, this is not something that I was going in taking lightly. And so they didn't take me that time, and so I settled back in, and as I said, I was kind of relieved in being back at CAA. And then a couple months later, it was a Saturday morning, I was hiking Paestoa Peak, and I get to the top of the mountain, and I check my phone, and I see that I have a text message from the governor's then chief of staff asking if I would get back to her that weekend. And I said, oh crap, because I knew instantly exactly what it was she was wanting, because I knew that there were, you know, issues that were happening with the director that had been appointed, and so I was like, you know, what am I going to do? And so I said, well, I'll call her back when I get home. So that whole hike down, you know, I thought about, like, what am I going to say when I call? And you know, I think what I thought about before I called is, I think, sort of what's always sort of driven me to do this sort of work. And if you look and you heard about the things I've done in my career, it's often been around children's issues and education. And so they asked today, like, you know, talk about, like, what motivates you, why you do this work. And there's a lot of things, a lot of factors. Certainly, I think my parents really inspired that in me. And there's a lot of other factors, but I think one of the experiences that I would share with you today really started when I just graduated from law school. And 2 years after I graduated from law school, I was working for a law firm here in Phoenix. And one of the partners with that law firm was on the board for the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. And she would come in and she said, have you ever thought about being a big brother in the program? And it was not really something I thought that I was interested in doing at that time. And I said no, probably like 4 or 5 times when she asked me. She asked like over the course of a few months, and she kept asking. She was persistent. Her son was she was a single mom, and her son was in the program. And she started to talk about like what Big Brothers Big Sisters is, and she said her son goes with his big, and they go to lots of Suns games and sporting events. And I was like, okay, well maybe that sounds good because I love sports and I can get tickets to free sporting events and go to that. And so ultimately I said yes. I said yeah, I'll do it. And so I got signed up, did the background checks. They had like a training class, and then I met my case manager from Big Brothers Big Sisters. She came to my house and brought like kind of background on 3 children that potential matches for me. And they all sounded great. There was, she wanted me to pick from these 3 kids, and I was like, how do I pick from these? And she talked about, how there's long waiting lists, and some of these kids have been on the list for a long time. But then she kind of like pointed me to the one in particular, which was Joey, he was 6 years old at the time. And she said, I think you should really go with Joey. And she said, he's young, he's 6, and he said, that's really young for our program. We typically don't take them that young. But she said, he's really been through a lot in his first 6 years in terms of adversity. Single mom, and she had been he had experienced a lot of witnessing of domestic violence and substance abuse and other things in their home. And to the fact that he had actually witnessed his mom get beat up pretty bad, that she was hospitalized. And he had been through a whole lot, and so I said, okay, he sounds like he could use a mentor, and so I signed up, got matched to Joey, and so the case manager set up our first time that we would meet, his mom and I and Joey. And something happened where the time that we were going to meet that she gave to his mom was different than the time that I had. So we were going to meet at like 5 o'clock or 5:30 and one day. And so Joey had thought it was a week earlier. That was the date they had. And so I guess what I was told, he got home from school that day, and even though our meeting wasn't till 5:30, he got home, I think, around 3:30, and he immediately went outside they lived in a trailer park in Sunny Slope, and he just sat on the curb waiting for me to come, is what I was told. And I didn't know that I was supposed to be there that day, and I never showed up. And so what they said is he just waited until it got dark, and then he went in and he cried. And so that was like, oh crap, I've like already disappointed this kid and let him down. But ultimately we got connected, we got our dates and times right, and we met, we got matched, and it's kind of awkward. You don't know each other, and now we're going to go out, and I'm supposed to mentor. And I think the one thing that Joey really was into was baseball at that time, and so that was our first thing that we did. We went to the park one Saturday and we played baseball, and that's kind of how our relationship started, is just doing that. And we were matched, and typically with the Big Brothers Big Sister program, they say, well, we want you to commit to doing this for 2 years. And that's kind of how I went into this, thinking I'll do this for 2 years, and and then that'll probably be it. And so as we did this, Joey and I did all the typical things you do at Big Brothers Big Sisters over the next few years, and it went way beyond 2 years. We went to Suns games and ASU games and all these different things. We played sports, we bowled, and he went to my family's events and really became a part of our family. And so it was that typical big brother, big sister relationship. But all through those years of me being his mentor, Joey was also going through some very difficult times at home. because his mom was still having a lot of issues with substance abuse. She was been some pretty violent relationships, domestic violence. They were experiencing poverty, and so over those years, they must have moved 7 or 8 times. They were homeless at times. They changed schools a lot. Joey continued to witness a lot of domestic violence, things that, like, he could not get attached to things. Like, he would get a new bike, and it would get pawned to pay for the bills, or he'd get a new video game, and it would get pawned. Or I remember one time he was so happy he got a new puppy, and the particular boyfriend at that time not only directed his domestic violence towards people, but also towards the puppy. And he lost the puppy after a short time. And so those were the kinds of things that we were dealing with, where it was so weird that on the weekends he and I would have such a great time, and we would spend such great time. But then when I would take him home, I could see the stuff that he was going through, and it was just so difficult. And so it became obvious that this is going to go on for much longer than 2 years, because I could see that, even though he was going through such difficult times at home, it was that consistency of spending that time every weekend with me and just having somebody in his life that he could talk to and just not have the chaos that he was dealing with at home made such a difference for him. And so we continued to be that big brother, big sister for a few years. And then when Joey was getting ready to go into high school, his mother called me one day, and things were getting really bad. They were about to go homeless. She was in another abusive relationship, and she asked if I could take Joey in with me. And that was not on my agenda at all. I had just gotten elected to the legislature. And, when you're thinking about running for the legislature, one of the hard parts is, there's a big cut in pay that comes with going to the legislature. And I was a young lawyer, and I figured, like, how can I do this? And I had figured it all out. I got an extra part-time job, and I was like, okay, I can run for the legislature and be in the legislature, and I can make an income for one person. I was not planning to be able to do that arrangement, raising a teenager as well. So that was a challenge that I was not expecting, but I thought it was important, so I became Joey's legal guardian, and we made the finances work, and that worked out. And so as Joey went into high school, he moved in. And I was on the school board for the Phoenix Union High School District. We got him enrolled in school, and it really, I think, changed Joey's life, because for the first time in his life, he had his own bedroom. He was able to go to just one school. He was able to really have stability. He played sports. He was on the baseball team. He was able to make friends. And, really, I think, changed his life for the better for those high school years. And he did real well. He flourished throughout high school. And then when he graduated from high school, because I was on the board, I actually was the school board member who got to be up on stage and hand him his diploma as he walked across the stage when he graduated. And it was, It was definitely an emotional experience for both of us, because it just brought, all the things that we had been through in those years together. And, Joey kept in touch with his mom and had a relationship with her, even beyond that when he lived with me. She passed away about 6 years ago from cancer, but, up until her death, they still had a good relationship. And today, Joey's in his 30s. He's married. He has a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. They have a beautiful home in Goodyear, and they're doing very well. In fact, thank you. We actually just spent a couple weeks ago, New Year's Eve weekend, we all went to Disneyland together. And so it was and so that experience with Joey is certainly something that has always been brought home to me in doing this work. It's certainly on that hike down from Piestewa Peak that day, as I often do, I thought about that relationship and what I went through with Joey during those times. And I thought about, as I take this role as the leader of the Department of Child Safety, in Joey's case, I was able to see firsthand the difference of having, stability and consistency in a child's life, the difference that could have been, if there were resources for his mom and for families like that, to be able to deal with, domestic violence and poverty. And what would happen if his mom had been able to have those kinds of resources, that maybe they wouldn't have had to go through all of that in the first place. And so all of that has always kind of driven sort of the work that I do, and really I think helped me to see that I wanted to take this role and to be a part of the things that we're doing at the Department of Child Safety to hopefully make a difference for all Arizona children and families, and try to bring those kinds of consistency and stability to Arizona children when they're going through traumatic times and difficult times. And one of my big focuses as the new director for DCS is to really focus on prevention and looking to see what are the resources that we can provide to families so that they don't have to come into the child welfare system to begin with. The vast majority of cases that come into our hotline are cases of neglect. But when you look deeper into those cases, you often see it's really just people that are dealing with issues of poverty, whether they don't have access to adequate childcare or housing or other things. And oftentimes there's domestic violence that's related to those things too. And so if we can do the right thing and provide the resources for the families, and that's why organizations like JFCS are so critically important in that system, then we can make a difference. And so focusing on prevention is really something that will be a priority of mine in this role, but also looking to see what are the things that we can do to keep families together. And so our priorities are also looking at when we do have to remove children from homes, can we keep them with family through kin? Are there grandparents, aunts, uncles that we can keep them with? And how can we provide the resources to those caregivers so that children can stay with their families? And then also, if we can't do that, we really need to reduce the number of children in Arizona that are in group homes. That's not the right kind of setting for them. And so if we don't have enough kinship providers, how can we increase our number of community foster families in Arizona? And we have seen a steady decrease in the number of people interested and willing to be foster families. Since the pandemic, we have seen a steady decrease in Arizona. So if that's one pitch I would make, loving, caring, supportive foster families can make such a huge difference in the lives of children who are going through very traumatic situations themselves. And so really, what can we do to really increase the number of community foster families will also help us to be able to reduce the number of kids in group homes as well. And then I think also the other last thing I would say is changing the culture at DCS is another big focus of mine in this role, in that, starting with our staff. And, people often talk to me as like the DCS director is the hardest job in state government. That's what they tell me. And I say, no, it's not. It's being those caseworkers who go out into the field and dealing with the kinds of situations that, like the kind that Joey dealt with every single day, being that your job and really having to deal with those. Those are the toughest jobs in Arizona. And so how do we support our workers? And I think that is about, always, treating our workers with kindness, with empathy, with transparency, with openness, and trying to create that culture within our organization, because hopefully then what I'm hoping is that culture then extends out to how we treat the families that we deal with. And so that when people see DCS coming into their home, they don't see it as an adversarial relationship, but really we are coming into their home to work with them to find out the best outcomes so that hopefully we can keep those families together, provide the resources that they need. But that's about changing how we approach our work and making sure that we are developing that culture of really collaborativeness and working together. And so as I said, it's not DCS going alone, it's all of us working together. And that is why I am just so grateful for JFCS, the work that you do. Thank you all for supporting this amazing organization, and thank you for having me here today. So, thank you.